If then sentient beings who have already planted roots of superior goodness, who have already been purified from all obstacles, who have already matured the continuities of their consciousness, who have already repeatedly cultivated liberation, who have already been able to accumulate the requisites of superior merit and wisdom, if such were able to attend to the doctrine of these scriptures of implicit meaning, they would truly understand the underlying intent of my words, and would engender a deep faith in and understanding of this doctrine. For they would truly penetrate this meaning in an infallible understanding. Relying upon the practices of that penetration, they would quickly be able to realize the final stage. Because of their deeply engendered pure faith in me, they would know that the Tathagata is supremely awakened and manifests true wisdom in all things. There are other sentient beings of upright disposition who have already planted roots of superior goodness, who have already been purified from all obstacles, who have already matured the continuities of their consciousness, who have already repeatedly cultivated liberation, but who are not yet able to accumulate the requisites of superior merit and wisdom. Although they have such upright dispositions, they lack the ability thoughtfully to make judgments on doctrinal propositions. Yet, because they do not set up their own views when they attend to this doctrine, even though they lack the ability truly to understand the underlying intent of my words, yet they will be able to engender a deep faith in this teaching. They will believe in this scripture. The teaching of the Tathagata is a most profound revelation, is associated with the most profound emptiness, is difficult to glimpse, difficult to understand, is beyond thinking, is not within the sphere of rational reflection, is to be subtly interpreted, is understood only by the wise. But they abide in it with humility and say, "The wisdom of all Buddhas is profound indeed. The reality of all things is profound indeed. Only the Buddha Tathagatas are able to understand it well, for it is not something we are able to understand. For the sake of sentient beings of various commitments, all the Buddha Tathagatas have turned the wheel of the true doctrinal teaching. For the wisdom and insight of all Buddha Tathagatas is infinite, while our wisdom and insight follows in their wake." Although they are able to revere this scripture and declare it to others, to copy it and protect it, to unroll it and disseminate it, to venerate and honor it, to recite it and review it, yet they will still be incapable of the effort of meditating upon it, and thus they will be incapable of penetrating the underlying intent of my words. But those sentient beings will be able to increase the requisites of merit and wisdom, and they will be able to mature the continuities of their consciousnesses that have not been matured. There are other sentient beings who, just like those described above, have not yet been able to accumulate the requisites of merit and wisdom, but whose lineages are not of an upright disposition or character. Although they do have the ability to make judgments on doctrinal propositions, yet, abiding in their own views, even if they hear this doctrine, they will be unable truly to understand the underlying intent of my words. Even if they were to engender faith and understanding in this doctrine, they would only be clinging to the words that express the meaning. That is, that all things most certainly have no essence and no arising, are originally quiescent, and are essentially in cessation. Consequently, they take up the view of nihilism and the non-existence of all marks. With this view of nihilism and the non-existence of all marks, they negate all marks, for they think that everything is simply unmarked. They dispense with and negate not only those marks of things clung to in imagination, but also the marks of other dependency and full perfection. Now, the very ability to designate the imagined pattern presupposes that other dependency and full perfection are described by marks. If Then, in dispensing with and negating the descriptive marks of the imagined, they regard the marks of other dependency and full perfection as unmarked. They, in fact, dispense with and negate all three characteristic patterns. They do form concepts about my teaching, but in their negation of meaning, they do not form concepts of its meaning. Because, while forming concepts of my teaching, in their negation of meaning, they do not form concepts of its meaning. They do maintain this doctrine, but they do not maintain its meaning. Nevertheless, because they have engendered faith and understanding in regard to this doctrine, their merit will increase, but they will turn away from and lose wisdom, because they engender clinging to what is meaningless. Because they turn away from wisdom, they will lose that wide, limitless doctrine. Yet other sentient beings listen to them and take their doctrine as the true doctrine, and their negation of meaning as true meaning. If they follow that view, they will form their concept of doctrine from that doctrine, and their concept of meaning from that negation of meaning. They will devote themselves to that doctrine as doctrine, and to that negation of meaning as meaning. Therefore, they likewise will turn away from and lose the good doctrine. Other sentient beings do not follow this view, but as soon as they hear that all things have no essence and no arising, are originally quiescent, and are essentially in cessation, they feel dread. Feeling such dread, they say, "This is not the teaching of the Buddha, but rather the teaching of a demon." With such an understanding, they attack and curse this scripture. Therefore, they encounter great misfortune, and are blocked by the obstacle of their action against the doctrine. This is why I have taught that if one forms the view that all descriptive marks are no marks, and propounds this meaninglessness as meaning, this will bring about the obstacle of action against the doctrine. Because they beguiled limitless sentient beings, they caused them also to be blocked by this obstacle of action against the doctrine. Good son, there are other sentient beings who have not yet planted roots of goodness, who have not yet been purified from all obstacles, who have not yet matured their continuities of consciousness, who have not yet repeated their commitments, who have not yet accumulated the requisites of merit and wisdom, and whose lineage is not of an upright disposition or character. Even though they are able thoughtfully to judge doctrinal propositions, yet they always maintain their own views. Even if they hear this doctrine, they will be unable truly to understand the underlying intent of my words, or to have deep faith in this doctrine. They will form the concept that this doctrine is not true doctrine, and that this meaning is not meaning. Clinging to the idea that this doctrine is not true doctrine, and that this meaning is not meaning, they publicize their evaluation, saying, "This is not the teaching of the Buddha, but of a demon." With such an understanding, they slander, reject, curse, and revile this scripture as useless and mistaken. And in untold ways they attack, criticize, and discard this scripture. They regard all those who have faith in this scripture as a rival faction. From the very beginning, they are blocked by the obstacle of their action against doctrine, and thus they impede others by means of this obstacle of action against doctrine. It is easy to describe the beginning of this obstacle of action, and to estimate how many hundreds of thousands of eons it will take for it to be overcome. Good son, these are differences in the various kinds of commitments of sentient beings to my well-enunciated and well-controlled doctrinal discipline, and my good doctrinal teaching expressed with a purified intent. At that time, the world-honored one recited these verses to emphasize his meaning. All things have no essence, no arising, and no passing away, are originally quiescent, and are essentially in cessation. What wise man speaks thus without an underlying intent? I have taught the no essence of marks, arising, and ultimate meaning. But one who does not know the underlying intent of the Buddha will lose the true path and be unable to travel thereon. All those paths of purity and all the purifications rely upon this one path only, for there is no second. Thus, herein I have established the single vehicle. But this does not mean that there are no differences in the lineages of sentient beings. In the world of sentient beings, unlimited beings simply are delivered in their individual persons and enter quiescence, for it is difficult to attain that cessation realized together with the great compassion and courage that does not turn away from sentient beings. In the uncontaminated realm, subtle and difficult to conceive, liberations are equal and undifferentiated, for there all meaning is complete and free from delusion and suffering, without duality or comparison, for this is eternal happiness. At that time, the Bodhisattva Paramartha Samudgata addressed the Buddha and said, "World-honored one, the intent underlying the words of all Buddha Tathagatas is rare, rare indeed. It is subtle, subtle indeed. It is profound, profound indeed. It is difficult to penetrate indeed. I now understand this meaning enunciated by the world-honored one as follows. The world-honored one has designed the teaching so that the marks of all things are essentially without essence in reference to the pattern of clinging to what is imagined, whereby the attribution of names and symbols to conditioned images that support those imagined descriptive marks clung to within the range of discrimination are taken to be the aggregate of material form, the descriptive marks of its essence, the descriptive marks of its specific difference, whereby the attribution of such names and symbols is taken to be the mark of the essence or difference of the arising of material form, the passing away of material form, or the complete knowledge of the eternal severance from material form.